Okay, it's going to be a review of the WWF In Your House Beware of Dog pay-per-view. So this is the May of 1996, where the power goes out. So yeah, we're talking about a pay-per-view where there's a power outage. You can make the argument that it's not a very interesting show, but at the same time, you would think this would be Vince McMahon's nightmare. So it should be really interesting to see the kind of reaction he had when he was doing the announcing and the power did go out. So if you haven't seen the show, and you know, it's funny, I actually was at a friend's house, the same friend where we had WrestleMania 8, WrestleMania 12 down the street from me. My brother was really into it at the time. So yeah, I must have been impressed with what I saw from Shawn. So I think I wanted to check out the pay-per-view. I just remember sitting through the Sonny heel turn with the smoking guns. Or, you know, Sonny actually turning on the Godwins and siding with the smoking guns. That was actually on the pre-show. I remember that more than anything. And then I remember, like, the power goes out on the pay-per-view, and they stopped the pay-per-view. And I just remember going home after that. That's really all I remember about it. So if you watch that show, eventually for the main event, the power did come back on, but to make it up to the audience, they gave them a second night. And it's really, really weird too, because, you know, depending on the cable provider, whether it be Cablevision, DirecTV, every cable company had a different philosophy. Partial refund, and you know, some of them you were able to get the second show for free, which would actually be on the Tuesday night. And there's actually a Raw in the middle of both shows too. And it's funny, when I look back on it, I think the most memorable thing of this is actually Memorial Day weekend. I think the most memorable thing was actually the Ahmed Johnson Goldust, you know, CPR spot, where Goldust gives Ahmed the resuscitation and kind of holds it a little bit too long. And Ahmed Johnson just flips out on him. That really is one of the more iconic moments of 1996. But yeah, you know, we have a very, very soap opera driven storyline here with the British Bulldog and Shawn Michaels. Unfortunately for Shawn, you know, this seems to me like it was the most frustrating night of the whole 1996 run for Shawn. You could definitely see he was in a bad mood, temper tantrum. I just think a lot of different things came out to play on this pay-per-view event. So yeah, let's get right down to it. This would be kind of a confusing review because there's two different nights. But this is May 26th and May 28th of 1996. The original pay-per-view was in Florence, South Carolina. The second night of tapings was actually in North Charleston, South Carolina. They only did about 6,000 in attendance. The gate is only about 60,000. And they weren't even able to fill up a major arena here. So I think with this pay-per-view, I think a lot of the bad business just had to do with timing. You know, they're coming off of one of the best gates ever for the curtain call, Madison Square Garden, where you got to see, you know, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash do their farewell, with Triple H getting blamed for everything there. And apparently that MSG show, you know, they should really release that show on the network, because it's become like one of the more famous, you know, shows to talk about. And they have pretty good footage of it. That's actually where the Body Donnas dropped the belts, I believe, to the Godwins, if I'm not mistaken, on that show. So that they do have good footage of that show. It should be interesting to see if the WWE ever releases that. But yeah, like make no doubt about it, like, business was good at this time in certain areas. Like the Raw ratings were really good. That MSG house show was really, really good. The pay-per-view buy rates aren't quite there. I think South Carolina, having Davey Boy Smith in the main event, it's not an ideal situation. I don't think the WWF was ever like a hotbed in the Deep South, you know, because, you know, you got a lot of the competition there, whether it be the NWA and WCW. So the pay-per-view buy rate was not very good here. They do about 110,000 buys. A lot of that money had to be refunded. So it's really, really unclear as to how much of a profit they made from this show. But no, this would definitely not be one of the better financial successes in WWF history. And when the power did go out, there's no backup generators. So they just had to, you know, roll the dice. And, you know, this was just a very frustrating night, I think for everybody here. But I thought this would be an interesting video to do, because it should just be interesting to see how, Vince reacted and, the morale of the locker room for a power outage. So, but yeah, man, let's get right down to it. I was going to talk about my personal experiences with power outages and the fear of them and the annoyance that they can cause. I just dealt with, people coming in to help me out with a mold problem last week. And they ended up blowing a fuse, and they're trying to translate to me in English from Spanish that the power went out. They were trying to help. They wanted me to help them put the power back on, and the whole thing was just a nightmare. And during the pandemic, lost power for a whole week. That was real. Like the combination of the pandemic and, them being really slow because of the pandemic to put the power back on, that was a real nightmare as well. So, anytime you're relying on the internet and relying on, not when you don't have power to get on the computer and do business is very, very stressful. So you could only imagine, how stressed out, someone like Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard were when they're dealing with live pay-per-view and an actual power outage here. So, some people might not find this video interesting, but it's a very unique show. They never really had a show like this before. And if you want to find the silver lining, look no further than what happened with Jim Ross and Stone Cold Steve Austin on this show. No doubt about it. But let's see if we could get through it without it sounding that confusing. All right. So, like I was saying, guys, I was at a friend's show, friend's house down the, at the time down the street for this pay-per-view. And I do remember on the pre-show, the Smoking Guns actually defeat the Godwins. Actually, at the time, Sonny is being manipulative with the Godwins here, and she sides with the Smoking Guns, and she becomes. The Smoking Guns become the new tag team champions. So if you haven't seen it yet, and it shocked the shit out of me last night, I had no idea that season 4 is pretty much done with and is premiering already. They even have it on demand right now. I couldn't get to sleep last night. I was in a lot of pain from an injury, and I ended up watching the Dark Side of the Ring about Sonny and Chris Candido. So, these Dark Side of the Ring, season 4, they're rolling out right now. So definitely check that out. So, Sonny, this is definitely one of Sonny's biggest moments, swerving everybody and siding with the Smoking Guns, helping them win the tag team championships. This match is actually not on the network. So, but, it's probably one of the more memorable things of the show. So we're going to move on to the first match on the actual pay-per-view here. So we got Marc Mero with Sable taking on Hunter Hearst Helmsley. So they set this up at WrestleMania. Triple H actually got squashed by the Ultimate Warrior. He actually brought Sable to ringside with him. And it's funny, while this thing was going on, I thought to myself, wow, Triple H, was the first one to bring out Sable, and Sable actually ends up with Brock. It kind of made me think, it would have been cool, like during Triple H and Brock's trilogy, their feud, I guess you want to call it a trilogy or feud. It would have been interesting to see if they could have incorporated Sable into that mix, given how, Triple H was the first one to really, give Sable her start, at WrestleMania 12. So I never really thought about that. But, backstage at WrestleMania 12, you remember, Marc Mero was cutting a promo. He's like, look into these eyes. First time you've ever seen Marc Mero, and then Triple H kind of cuts him off and they start fighting with each other. And, Triple H is actually blaming the squash to Ultimate Warrior on Sable. So that's kind of where the feud started here. So they follow up on it. And I thought this was pretty damn good. At the time, Mero was getting a lot of criticism for not living up to expectations. The Wild Man gimmick wasn't going too well. And, I just think that the character was making a lot more money than some of the other guys that they had signed, more guaranteed money than the guys like Austin and Foley. So, maybe that's why it took a lot of criticism. I just thought he was really athletic. It just looked like he wasn't very safe in the ring here. But, Triple H was good, man. They got a lot of time. I mean, Triple H is coming off of the curtain call here. And he's still going out in the opener of a pay-per-view and getting more than 15 minutes and is being allowed to do rest holds and, going to work on, Marc Mero's arm. So I really thought this was solid stuff. Ultimately, Triple H takes a monkey flip into the turnbuckle and gets pinned by Marc Mero. But I thought Marc Mero looked pretty good here. Not the prettiest wrestler at the time. Sable was totally different back then. Like, she kind of had like an innocence about her in '96 that kind of went away in '97. It's very, very weird. She just looked a little bit, I want to say lost and maybe just a little bit uncertain at the time. But you could just see the confidence really rise when you get to, WrestleMania 13 weekend. She really kind of, flipped the switch with her and Sunny. In '96, I would say Sunny was the most valuable female, but by '97, Sable really kind of took that over, and, the rest is history there. Okay, so there's actually a promo with British Bulldog, Jim Cornette, Diana. They're cutting, a promo on Shawn being a womanizer and, the restraining order. It's a real, I'll talk more about the storyline when we get into it. But, you can hear Austin's music hit, that Ringmaster Ted DiBiase theme hit. And then there's actually a transition. So I think the lights actually go out when Austin's making his way to the ring. So Savio and Austin have a match in the dark. And apparently Vince is just having some coffee and just watching the match in the dark. There's a little bit of lighting with people in the crowd. Meltzer's actually in the crowd and is actually watching the rest of the show in the dark. I guess you could see enough of it, but obviously you can't get it on the pay-per-view. So I think this is what happened. I think lightning actually hit a transformer that was generating power to this Florence, South Carolina arena. So they lost power. But you know what? When you look at it, it wasn't really that long of an amount of time. So say the power goes out around the 20-minute mark of the pay-per-view. So it pretty much comes back on with about a half hour left. So maybe like a 73-minute, power outage. I wouldn't say that's the worst thing in the world. I've been without power for days. During the pandemic, it was almost a whole week. And I wouldn't say that's not an awful amount of time to be without power. So at the time, Vince is just kind of, just really enjoying Austin and Savio Vega. Apparently he was quoted as saying, God, this is a hell of a match. So, maybe Vince just, being able to just relax, take a time out and observe without, over promoting stuff on commentary. That, maybe this is the moment where he realized, all right, the power goes out, but I just found the next guy. And, I think this is where he kind of had the thought in his mind of Austin replacing Triple H as the King of the Ring, and, the rest is history. So obviously this Savio and Austin match is kind of lost. There is highlights of them, whipping the shit out of each other with the strap in the dark, but, they would go on to have a much better match that everybody could see on the sequel to this show. So the power comes on for the main event. So we're going to jump right to the main event. So this is how the network has it in order. Right after the Triple H opener, they go right to Michaels and British Bulldog is the second match on the network. So with the Shawn Michaels and British Bulldog feud, it was pretty controversial. So they had a situation where Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, got word that Shawn was, trying to hit on Diana, and he went to attack him at the end of the previous pay-per-view at Good Friends, Better Enemies. And there's a segment where Diana says to Shawn, she's like, Shawn, I know you want me, but I just want to let you know I'm a married woman. And Shawn basically says, don't flatter yourself. I would never hit on a married woman. So the original storyline was that, Diana was angry with Shawn because there was a backstage segment where she actually came on to him and wanted to have sex with him, wanted to sleep with him, and Shawn turned her down. So to get revenge on Shawn, she was going to do this whole legal angle where they bring in lawyers and Jim Cornette and make all these false accusations. So the storyline ruffled a lot of feathers. Obviously, Brett didn't like it. You know, it really would have. See, I think the storyline would have been a lot better if they presented it as Shawn sleeping with Bret Hart's sister. Like, looking back on it, that would have been. That would have sparked a lot of heat, you know, with Shawn, with the situation with her being Bret's sister. But with Davey Boy Smith, he's not really a great heel. He's not a great talker. So it just really felt like British Bulldog was just there. Even though it's beware of dog, it really was just beware of all these accusations. So, you know, that's kind of the feeling that it gave. I think it was a unique storyline at the time. It's very soap opera driven. I think it created a lot of interest, but I just think it took away from the match. I think it took away from British Bulldog to be completely honest with you. This whole storyline. So really, you know, the motive was they kind of dropped the Diana stuff with her, you know, being infatuated with Shawn, and just made it to be Jim Cornette just trying to soften up Shawn and trying to take his mind away from the actual match. And I guess that's what they kind of settled on there. They actually do this skit on Raw where they have a female that broke up with a married wrestler and blamed it on Shawn Michaels being, you know, a womanizer and a family destroyer. And then they even have Marty Jannetty even kind of ratting Shawn out and saying Shawn only went after married women and was a party animal and all that stuff. So, you know, pretty unique storyline here. But you kind of get the feeling that Shawn was a little bit annoyed by it. And maybe there was some guilt, too, because, you know, obviously, you know, I don't think he ever slept with Diana, but it was actually him and British Bulldog sleeping with Sonny at the time, you know, really kind of destroying Chris Candido's reputation and his, you know, kind of, you know, hurting his, you know, career at this time. So maybe there was a little bit of guilt on Shawn Michaels here. So, but before Shawn goes out, there's actually an interview with, I think it's Doc Hendricks, and he just looks really, really upset. He looks annoyed. He looks frustrated. There's a segment between him and Perfect where they tease that, and yeah, it just looks like Shawn's really frustrated throughout this whole match. I didn't really notice any frustration with the theme music. You know, British Bulldog's theme plays first, and then they played Shawn's theme second. Apparently, Shawn was upset about that. I didn't really notice that to be that big of a deal. I just thought he was selling the fact that he was angry with the finish. And then there's this whole thing about there being a overweight woman at ringside talking trash to Shawn, and Shawn is jawing with her throughout the match. I didn't really notice any of that. It just came off to me like Shawn was really frustrated about the situation. You know, I think anytime, you know, the expectations are to deliver, obviously Shawn wanted to deliver a great match. I mean, this is the weak link of his 1996 run. If you want to pick one match from Shawn's run from 96 that definitely has some flaws to it, that didn't really deliver, this would be it. But, you know, when you have those kind of expectations and, you know, things are getting in the way, you know, whether it be photographers, and in this situation, whether it be the uncertainty of whether the power is going to stay on, yeah, it fucks with you mentally. It can be a very stressful situation. Anytime you're relying on, you know, the power to stay on to produce money or to produce, you know, a great match, it's got to be tough. And because of the situation, there was like 3 different finishes. I think Bruce was actually saying to Shawn, well, if the power goes out, do this finish. If the power stays on, do this finish. And if this happens, then do this finish. And then Shawn just said to him, well, what the fuck do you want me to do? He said, why don't you just shout it out? Just communicate with the ref about what finish you want during the match. So I could totally understand it. But, you know, considering the circumstances, I still thought the match was pretty damn good. It's probably the worst Shawn Michaels and British Bulldog match. I mean, their matches are usually strong. And I thought this was fine, you know. But, you know, their matches are really, really good. The King of the Ring match was awesome. Even the one night only match, even though that gets criticism about the finish being changed, their work is still pretty damn good. Here, I just thought Shawn just looked a little bit nervous at times. Both of them just looked overwhelmed. And I think more than anything, I think rushed is the perfect word for it. Everything about it just felt rushed. I think at this point, it was important to deliver the main event because I don't think every cable company was going to guarantee that you were going to see a replay. So ideally, I would have said, if you could do Shawn and British Bulldog on Tuesday and the replay, let them do it on Tuesday. This way they can have a much better match without worrying about the power going out. But I think at the time, you really needed them to just get on and deliver because of, the partial refunds and, every cable company wasn't going to air the replay for free. So, yeah, I guess it was important just to get them out there and just do their thing. But, the match was okay. Shawn and Bulldog wrestled hard. There were some really, really nasty Irish whips. There's a lot of hard-hitting collisions from both guys. The highlight of the match was actually Shawn's attempt to do a crucifix, and Bulldog just kind of countered it into a Samoan drop. I thought that was good. But yeah, I mean, they never really found their rhythm like they did at the King of the Ring match. King of the Ring match was beautifully executed. The super kick is the only thing you can really that has a flaw about that match. But the finish here ends up with Shawn Michaels doing a German suplex to British Bulldog. And it's actually a double pin. Both guys' shoulders are pinned to the mat, and it actually just ends in a no finish. I think Kyoto actually awards it to Davey Boy, and Hebner actually comes out and says, no, Shawn is the actual winner of the match, and they just settle on a no finish. It would have been cool for them to do a rematch on the second night, but I just think they wanted to save the rematch for King of the Ring. I think there's a lot of reasons as to why. I would actually say I think from an international standpoint, I think these guys wrestled a lot of matches internationally and overseas. So I think you wanted to continue this thing going into house shows and into the King of the Ring. So I think that's probably the most important reason as to why they wanted to do this no contest, for this night. But yeah, that German suplex from Shawn, that's not Shawn. That's like one thing that Shawn's not great at doing. Very rarely do you see Shawn execute a German suplex or any like Chris Benoit type of offensive moves. Even the crossface from Shawn doesn't look great. The German is interesting here because when you compare it to Benoit, like I would almost compare it to like someone as a jump shooter. Like in basketball, when you're shooting a jump shot, you want to be square. You don't want the shot to be on the left side or the right side. And it seemed like the German was executed too much on one side. When you see a guy like Benoit or even someone like a Shelton Benjamin, or not Shelton Benjamin, Kurt Angle, do a German suplex, they're very crisp. It's square. The guy lands flat on his back, and he's not lifted in the air towards one side more than the other. So it's kind of a weird finish. I just don't think it was Shawn's. That's really not Shawn's expertise, but, he was able to deliver it, and, that's the no finish. Very, very, very underwhelming match, considering the talents involved. But I don't think this is the worst match of the night. The Pro Wrestling Observer actually voted this worst match from the pay-per-view as a whole. I would definitely disagree with that, but I think the expectations were so high that's why it was actually voted, worst match of the night. So yeah, man, there's a shitload of dark matches, in between Triple H's opener and Shawn Michaels, championship match. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to move on to the second night. So the first match on Beware of Dog 2, we got the Savio Vega Stone Cold Steve Austin Caribbean strap match. So the cool thing about this was on Raw, Ted DiBiase actually said that if Savio actually defeats Austin, that he would retire or just go away from the company for good. He would leave the WWF. And when they shot the interview, Austin was a little bit disappointed. He was like, he couldn't believe that DiBiase said what he said. So that was really interesting, and I think it definitely did come into play in the match. I think the original stipulation was that Savio had to be DiBiase's chauffeur if he won, but because of what happened, I think they just dropped that whole stipulation. But yeah, the bottom line is this Caribbean strap match is pretty damn cool. There's no pinfalls, no submissions. You have to touch each turnbuckle 4 times to win it. And, both Austin and Savio, their left shoulders are actually attached with the strap. It was good, man. It was good. It was vicious, hard hitting. Austin did some awesome, tackles. You can see that Austin was a great football player just by how he tackled Savio. Some of these, some of these near turnbuckle touches. Austin probably took, probably the biggest bump he ever took here when Savio actually, whips him off the top turnbuckle into the front row. That's probably the biggest bump I think Austin ever took, at least in this company, the WWF. But yeah, man, very, very, very violent, very vicious, just lots of intensity. I will say this though, there are some rumors about this match that, kayfabe wise, Austin lost the match on purpose because, he wanted to punish Savio, which he did, but secretly he wanted DiBiase out of the fold. Like once DiBiase toyed with the idea of leaving, I think Austin made up his mind and just wanted Vega to leave. The only thing I really noticed about it, when you see the finish, it clearly looks like Austin lost on purpose. He just kind of yanks Savio into the turnbuckle and Savio actually wins. And there's other things I didn't even notice about the match, how Austin wouldn't touch the turnbuckle on certain occasions. So you have that going on there. And it does make sense. I think it does make sense that Austin would lose this match on purpose. And because it really opened up a lot. I think Ted DiBiase, moving away from the company really allowed Austin to do his own thing, and there at the time, Vince was actually quoted as saying he wasn't confident that Austin could deliver promos on his own. He thought people would hate Austin's accent, which that was proven wrong. Definitely Austin, to me, like when you let him just do his thing, he's one of the best mic workers ever, but it's got to be organic and his heart's got to be in it. And, when you let Austin just do what he wants, you usually got gold, especially as a heel. And then at the same time, I just think Triple H moving out of the King of the Ring contention because of the Madison Square Garden fallout. I think the combination of what happened with Triple H and DiBiase, if those two things don't align properly, how do you know Austin 316 out of the King of the Ring? How do you know that this doesn't propel the company into the next level? So, I hate saying this, but everything happens for a reason. And, for as bad as this weekend was for the company, at least you got, Austin just going in the right direction. And this was victory and defeat for Austin, no doubt about it. And, props to Savio Vega, too. So like we talked about at Backlash, you got the standing ovation. You got treated like a legend. And this match right here was definitely the highlight of Savio Vega's run. The match at WrestleMania 12 was okay between them, but nothing like this. This was actually nominated for Match of the Year at the Slammies. I would actually give this 4.25. This is really just hard-hitting stuff. And Vince just really loved the match in the dark. He just really, really enjoyed it. And apparently, like, he wasn't freaking out. He was just drinking his coffee and was just really, really into the match. So that was interesting to hear that Vince didn't really overreact, because you would think Vince would throw a fit. I guess because he was on commentary, he didn't really have a chance to yell at people for, not having backup generators or not, putting the generators into the budget or anything like that. He was just kind of, relax and chill about it. And, maybe you can make the argument that that's an example of a great leader. So there you go with that. All right, next up we have Vader taking on Yokozuna. They go about 9 minutes, the Battle of the Behemoths. It was cool because, you really want to transition Yokozuna, away from Jim Cornette. So Cornette, used to be with Yoko, now he's with Vader. So they really put over that Vader is the monster here. And, this gave Vader a lot of momentum. Lots of 3-point stances, that football stance where, they look like they're going to explode against each other. And, it was pretty physical. And, Yoko got Vader off of his feet a couple of times. Vader looks like he's pushing 400 here. Yoko looks like he's about 600. So Yoko definitely had the weight advantage, but it was interesting stuff. Vader takes advantage of the botched, what do you call it, bonsai drop from Yoko, and hits Yoko with the Vader bomb. Apparently this match went a lot better than the match that they had in the dark. So Vader is actually on the original poster here, so that was cool. But let's move on to the main event. We have a casket match for the Intercontinental Championship. So the Undertaker as the Intercontinental Champion. Never seen Taker with the IC title. It almost sounds, I I don't know. It almost sounds against the law to envision the Undertaker as the Intercontinental Champion. That's a championship he never really had to win or didn't really need. But yeah, Goldust actually defeats the Undertaker here. I like the Goldust Undertaker dynamic. So, you had Goldust doing a lot of sexual things at this time, like he did with Ahmed Johnson with the resuscitation and the CPR stuff. Even against Undertaker, he did a lot of crawling up the Undertaker's leg to kind of, bait him in and play, a lot of mind games between Goldust and Mankind throughout this whole year. And, the mind games became such a thing that they named one of the In Your Houses after it. But yeah, Goldust and Taker, I think I've said this before. I thought it was a good dynamic. There's natural history there with Dusty Rhodes. Taker actually debuted against Dusty's team at Survivor Series. So this was a nice little follow-up right here. It was actually a casket match. Yeah, Goldust actually got a lot of offense in, and Taker sold well for him. You actually had Jim Ross and Mr. Perfect on commentary for the Beware of Dog 2 portion of it, and I thought it was great. I thought Perfect was great here. He put over Taker with looking phenomenal with the old school, and at the same time he said, "Yeah, this Goldust, he might be bizarre, but you got to take him seriously in the ring." And I do think even at that time, it was really, really in to make fun of gay people. But at that time, Goldust did it in such a way where, it just came off it came off unique. It had a unique feel to it. And I think Marlena helped him out more than anything because, obviously this guy can't be that much of a, fruitcake or whatever if he has this really, really hot girl in Terry Runnels, Marlena on his side. And, I just think it made the Goldust character very unique. And I would definitely agree, there's not a soul that could have pulled it off, I think, better than Dustin Runnels. And I think Dustin Goldust has proven without a shadow of a doubt that the guy is a hell of a talent, hell of a worker. So it was just really, really unique, what they accomplished here. Wasn't crazy about the match. I thought it was good, not great. It actually is a casket match. So you see, yeah, it's actually a gold casket, and you got Mankind actually hiding in the casket to do the mandible claw to Undertaker. The casket actually breaks, but it's not that big of a deal. So Taker actually gets into the casket because of the mandible claw. So it really is cool. It really is kind of the you had to go back to Mankind after that Raw after WrestleMania. So it made perfect sense. And it really kind of, got the Mankind and Undertaker feud, finally building towards a big money match. So you definitely understand it. I will say this, though. The ending kind of sucked. So they actually look inside the casket after it's over. And Paul Bearer is just shocked that Undertaker's not there. Then Taker's music hits, and that came off a little bit corny. I think that was just kind of a foreshadowing. I think it was signs of that, maybe the Paul Bearer and Undertaker relationship had run its course. But, there's really not a lot to say about the match. I thought it was really good, man, between Goldust and Undertaker. A very, very, very underrated combination right there. And, yeah, Goldust definitely made it work. So, yeah, that's In Your House, Beware of Dog from 1996. I don't think this pay-per-view is going to resonate with everybody. I think a lot of people are going to look at the lack of buy rate and lack of success of it and the power outage and just look at it like it was a failure. But it was interesting, though. It was an interesting situation. Obviously the company, I think they lost a lot of money because of refunds. And there's certain cable operators that I don't think they honored the second night for free. So I just remember having to leave a friend's house because of the power outage. But I'll tell you what, though, man. And it's funny. I think it was things are so different now. But with WrestleMania 39, I was actually watching the NCAA tournament at the time. So with the network, I usually watch a lot of the stuff on demand. I'll probably watch it the next morning or I'll catch it on a replay. But I'll tell you what, man, if WrestleMania had actually had a tornado too. It was a tornado. It was pretty nasty. But But I'll tell you what, man, like if WrestleMania 19 or WrestleMania 20, 21, if I got a power outage for one of those pay-per-view parties for a WrestleMania, man, I would have flipped the hell out, man. I don't know, man. I would have been really, really upset. So you could only imagine how Vince felt at the time. But yeah, listen, man, they got through it. I think it was kind of compounded, and it probably felt a lot worse because I think the next night was Nitro actually going to 2 hours, and WCW was in the area, so it had to be a pretty stressful time for the company, especially with the Davey Boy Smith stuff. Like, apparently he actually asked for his release once they found out where they were going with the Diana storyline. Apparently Brett and Stu had to get involved and voice their opinion. And I guess they dropped it because she was going to be labeled as a slut if they went ahead with the, her actually approaching Shawn angle of it. But, they kept it clean and just made it like Cornette just trying to play mind games with Shawn and, take his attention away. And what's his name? Clarence Mason. He actually did issue Shawn Michaels a subpoena right before the match, and Shawn tore it up. So it just seemed to me like Shawn had a lot to remember here with, the finish and, what finish they do if the power goes out, and, all the storyline stuff too. I'm sure it made him feel a little bit guilty with what was going on with Sonny and everything. So it's a really, really unique pay-per-view. I'm sure most people would love to just forget about it. Even Jim Ross said, we're talking about a pay-per-view that had a power outage. Who cares? Sounds more like Jeff Jarrett, but you get the point. So, yeah, so if you want to watch this on the network, Shawn and Davey actually go second because of how this was structured. Goldust and Taker get the main event in the casket match. But, the match of the night was actually Stone Cold Steve Austin and Savio Vega. So if you're an Austin fan, this really has the first great, 4-star plus Austin match. And if you saw Backlash and didn't get what the big deal was about Savio Vega, give this pay-per-view a shot, because it definitely has some good moments on it. But, probably the worst in the Shawn Michaels and British Bulldog catalog. I got to say, I think Brett and Bulldog was a slightly better combination, but Shawn and Bulldog really rectified this match at King of the Ring. I would have loved for them to go back to Owen at King of the Ring. It would have been cool for them to wrap this up here, but I just get the feeling there was a lot of international dates ahead, maybe in England, and maybe that's why they wanted to keep the Davey Boy stuff alive. Even if he did ask for his release, I think he asked for his release after this whole thing was over. So that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know this probably sounded like it was all over the place, but it is what it is. Power outages are a pain in the ass. I actually hate them, and it was cool to see how the WWF reacted here. So that's pretty much it, and I'm out. All right.